It was,
You had to pay attention.
yeah.
And this is the beautiful thing about, I'm glad you asked the question because we didn't really touch on this. The whole vibe, everything around John was family and working together, common goal. Everybody working on the show had, of course, read the script. It wasn't like the costume people are there and the grips are there and the lighting people are there and the props are over there and the sound guys are over there. And, you know, he just, the guy was just amazing, you know.
Blocking and rehearsing, and I remember when Gil Hubbs, who shot Enter the Dragon, which I happened to work on, he said, Mike, could you get me on the set? I'll ask. He came. He spent an afternoon watching. I think it was on opening night. Next week I saw him on the set. I saw him somewhere. And he said to me, I said, what'd you think? He said, fascinating. Could you imagine what that guy could do with a little discipline? At which point I realized he and I would never have another conversation about art again. Because you get it or you don't get it. Whatever John's indiscipline was, it was essential to what he got. So as a result, in Woman, you have moments of buzz, focus, which works somehow for the film. Don't ask me how, it just does. Because you don't know where the actors are going. And it wasn't essential to John that everything be sharp. Now, I've come up through the ranks. I was 10 years as an assistant. You get fired for being this far out of focus. Because in the world of mainstream commercial filmmaking and photography, that is essential. But as I said, for John, not. So, you know, we had a sense of it, but every time it happened, it happened more than once, a couple of times, meaning the scenes. But blocking, rehearsing, no. They knew the lines, they did it. If you asked them to do it again, they do it again. But how many times? 2, 3 takes? I don't know. I don't think it were ever very many. You know,
that was the beautiful thing, though, that I lost my train of thought, is that he, without saying it, he insisted that everybody working on the film knows what we're shooting. They know what we're shooting now. You never saw a newspaper or magazine on a set, not even offset. The grips and the lighting and the props guy, when we were shooting, they didn't go out and take a break. They were up in the rafters or behind the chair and stuff. They were all plugged in to the actual scene that we were shooting. And if they had some crazy idea about something, they weren't too afraid to go and maybe ask John if he thought it was a good idea to do it this way instead of that way, you know. But that was a wonderful thing. Everybody felt like they were plugged in. Everybody felt like they were part of it and that their voice counted. And he loved that. He appreciated that. He loved you for it.
he created the energy for it.
Yeah.
He required it.
Very contagious.
The only reason I lasted 5 minutes is because he could see the fire in my eyes, because I really, really cared. So once that's established, you're family, period. I've had the really great fortune of working with 2 generations of Cassavetes. I did a movie with Nick that John wrote for Sean Penn and then died. And in 1994, 5 years later, they got the money from a French company to make the movie because the French think the world of him. Mm-hmm. So there I was shooting again with Nick, and Nick was great. Nick, you can see the Cassavetes in him. He's not his father by a long stretch. And we made the movie pretty standard, classic, commercial Hollywood. But the words and the characters were strictly Cassavetes, John Cassavetes.
I knew I shouldn't have told you this.
We were, by the way, at Musso Frank's just before we came here to have dinner, which is where we always went with John
But
and
of
the gang.
course.
Huh?
But of course.
Of course. Where we went with John after work or whenever we had an excuse, and we carried that on. When it would be Ben Gazzara and Peter Falk and Seymour Cassell and Jenna Rollins and Bo and me and maybe one or two other people talking like this to a whole new group of people. When we were done, right to Musso's. They close at 11. We'd get in there at 10:30 or get them to open the door. John, if that was midnight and there was anybody around, he would have gotten them to open the door. Anyhow,
Yeah.
he told me the story tonight. I never heard it before.
Well,
Because it had to do
I
with
guess
bullying.
the heading, the important heading would be John's access. John had access to everybody. If he wrote a new version of a script, he'd get on the phone on a Saturday or a Sunday, and he would call up these, huge names, and come up to the house, bring your wife, bring the kids, and we got some food up here, and everybody'd sit around a table, and they'd read the script, and trade parts, and all of that. And it was amazing, on a moment's notice, to see Dustin Hoffman or somebody like that. Well, I was in his office one day, and it was like late afternoon, and the door to his office was behind me, and John's desk was here, and he looks around me, like say, he goes, "Oh, David, come on in." And I thought it was David Armstrong, who was helping us in distribution and who started with us as a projectionist. And I turned around, and it was David Bowie. And this was about the Young America time. And my brain went into shock. It did. It was like, Bo, he's a human being. Chill. He's a human being.
Maybe.
Chill. And he's my favorite. Over the Beatles and the Rolling Stones even. David Bowie. Anyway, so what he had done, he had just bought the rights to Errol Flynn's life story. I don't know if it's autobiography or a biography, but David wanted John to direct it. I think maybe with him playing Errol Flynn, I don't know. But at one point, John said, "Let's go down and get a drink." Right below his office, there was a little bar on Wilshire. And I bit the bullet, and they went this way out the door, and I went back down the hallway to my music room because I didn't want to be a tag along. And John, God love him, he goes, "Hey, Bo, come on, are you coming down with us?" "Oh, okay." And went down there and sat across from David for an hour and a half. And he's the most polite, wonderful, warm person. And he had these two beautiful black ladies with him, kind of his entourage, who barely said a word. But I don't know why that's important to say that. I guess John's access. He knew people that, he got me hooked up when I did Woman Under the Influence with Booker T. Jones. He was my arranger and conductor. And I could have only done that through that avenue. But so that's
Okay.
that.
Great story.
It comes down to story. And also time and trends, We're hugely influenced by the commercial part of our lives in Hollywood, and what sells.
And big box office.
If you look at Star Wars, which I'm sure everyone in this room has, I've seen it twice, you'll notice the violence is pretty much still comic book, except it's more detailed, and there's more of it. When you hit a stormtrooper, there's a red area where he gets hit, and he goes down hard. That wasn't true in '77. So to me, it's just to me, with film, you can tell the story any way you want, with violence, without violence. But if you're going to use violence, you better have a purpose. My wife, who is a very sensitive, gentle woman, loves The Wild Bunch. She loves it because the men are real. And by the time they die in the final catastrophe, she's loved them for 2 hours plus. If a film can do that, it doesn't need violence. That story was about a violent time, and it had to end that way for that director. And that's just my opinion about it. I don't, I can't pretend that I'm an expert on today's independent film, but what I see is good storytelling, by and large. And,
That's a wild question.
I know.
that would come under unpredictable.
Yeah. He loved celluloid. I don't, what?
Do you remember on a woman when they brought the BL in?
The BL?
Area
Yeah,
35BL?
the new
Area?
camera that sat on your shoulder.
Oh.
Like a loaf of bread.
No,
Well, I told this to David. John was famous for handheld, and you had to hold a camera, it was 35 pounds, and you held it like this, and you used your upper body. It's hard to do for 400 feet is 4 minutes. It could be hard to do. And John would go 4 minutes like that. So he was #1 on the list for this new camera, a BL, an Arri, out of Germany, 1972. They delivered it to the set. And the first day, what it does, hold this, it's about so big, and it fits right on the shoulder. Handles are here, all the weight's through most of your body. You can do this for half an hour. John picks it up. He shoots a shot with it. He looks at it, he throws it on the couch, and goes back to his old camera. End of story.
he was very, very big on only working on stuff that he was familiar with. Not just subject matter, but people and locations and stuff. When I was up in Montreal, I found some money for him up there. At least they said they'd back a film of his, they'd be willing to talk about it. And I thought they were relatively serious, and I passed it on to John. He goes, what am I going to do in Montreal? I don't.
It's cold.
No, yeah, it's cold. I don't know. He's more comfortable in the Hollywood or Hollywood Hills or the Lower East Side, But that's what he knew, and that he stuck to what he knew and what he was comfortable with and what he had passion about. No permits, that's for sure.
You fake that. I mean, you just, if you're worried about traffic, you wait until it looks, you wait till it's reasonable, and then you do it. A big feature film, you got cops on all sides, you got permits that the mayor signed off on personally. You do all this stuff, and then the stunt guys make it work. And it works great. But John, we didn't have money or time for all that. It looks a way that is unique to what you're doing. There's probably a reason why you felt it was real, because it was real. Yeah, we just did it.
Thank you.
We're the lucky ones. We just happened to get to know him. And we will never forget it. It's a part of us. And we're trying to give some of that to you, because that's what John would want. But he was hugely unusual as a person. I mean it. He just, we can't begin to convey what we wish you could have all experienced for yourself. And you could all, there's not a person in this room he couldn't have related to in some way or another. And he would have taken the time to do it,
I just want to congratulate Steve for these photographs. Good job, man.
Thanks, man.
Good job.
John knew the value of money. It was worthless.
He hated money.
I just wanted to say, guys, because you've been looking at us, you're not aware that John has been with us the whole evening.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bob. Thank all of you for coming out. And
Thank you
this
very
inspires
much.
All the filmmakers and all of you. And I hope you're able to share a little bit about Cassavetes in person. See you guys at the filmmakers.